Hey, welcome back to Right on the Money. If you're just joining us, you have joined in the middle of an amazing episode, especially for business owners. Now, we're here today. We've got Kelly Carter, CEO of Beacon Retirement Planning Group. We've got Scott Bushkie, Managing Partner and Founder of Cornerstone Business Services. Where we last left off before the break, I teased in that we're going to talk about when to sell, when not to sell. We're going to talk about the fact that not all buyers are created equal. I am excited to dive into that. We're also, I'm calling your bluff, sir. You mentioned in the book, and we teased it, that as a business owner, you need to take a vacation to grow your business. But where I want to start is the book has some really good guidelines on when to sell and when not to sell. So tell us a little bit about the things that somebody should look for when to sell.
When to sell is when, emotionally they're ready to move on. They've separated their identity of themselves from the business. They understand their numbers. They understand what the value is. They understand what their net number is. And they understand what we call the lifestyle number of what do they need to live their ideal lifestyle after the fact. And also that they know where they're going to. What's that next chapter look like? That's when those numbers make sense and they're emotionally ready and they know what they're going to do next. That's a great time to sell, especially if their business is doing well. The market's doing well, all of those things all align to get the highest and best value for the business owner. And when you don't want to sell is kind of the opposite. When you don't know your numbers, you have no idea, if I sell my business today, can I live down in the Bahamas, or am I going to be living paycheck to paycheck? Or if your net number's here but your lifestyle number's up here, you either have to lower your lifestyle number, which most business owners don't want to do. They have something in mind of how they want to live, or they have to increase the value, or they need to work with someone like Kelly to try to reduce the taxes, but somehow get that net number up to the lifestyle number. But if it's not there, if that net number is below and they can't live their ideal lifestyle, they might need to work another year or two. But that's really, the big thing is understanding the numbers so they can make a well-informed decision, because most don't.
Now, with the numbers, and Kelly, that's where you come into the equation, especially when it comes to taxation. And one of the things I found really interesting, I'm looking at my notes, is we go into that part of the book where we talk about the different type of buyers. And we talk in particular that not all buyers are created equal. And I know you've got experience working with business owners on this. And that also, with not all buyers being equal, it also causes different tax implications, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. As Scott alluded to, trying to get the spouse to lower the lifestyle number is not a good conversation. Yeah. So understanding that you may have a number that is below your lifestyle number, but when we start to implement the tax planning, that's where the different buyer options come into play, whether it's a transition to a family, management. There are so many different, this is not an all or none. And I think that's what most business owners don't really understand. They're really good at running their business and understanding their KPIs, but they don't know, look, I don't always have to sell all the business. So there's so many different iterations of that buyer. It's not always who has the highest number, right, Scott? Right. I mean, that's fair. Is that fair?
Yeah, with our experience, probably 40% of the time, one of our clients will take not the highest offer, but someone else, because it's a better fit for the company, protects the employees, it's a better cultural fit. It's maybe more cash at close versus someone else that had a higher number, but it was more spread out over time.
Well, and maybe even more tax efficient.
Or more tax efficient, exactly. Yeah. And that's where, like you said, not all buyers aren't equal, but also not all deal structures are equal too. And that's where you kind of have to balance that cash at close with the certainty of getting paid versus also what's the tax analysis. There's certain structures that you'll have to pay more taxes in versus other, and that's where Kelly's team really does a nice job of trying to minimize those taxes.
From watching the movie, which again, folks, if you're a business owner, you know a business owner, you love a business owner, get them to see this movie. And in fact, if you look down below in the links, you'll see where you can find a theater near you. To get access to this film, you need to see it. Honestly, it should be required curriculum, like Doug said earlier in one of the earlier episodes. But one of the things that I find fascinating is the fact that we have to help business owners pull emotion out of it. I mean, this is the one area of their business where their view, their better judgment is clouded by emotion. Everything else is inventory and cash flow and numbers, except this area, the exit strategy is tied to a little bit of emotion. And one of the things in the book that you mentioned, Scott, is that, I got to look at my notes here, but 50% of businesses end due to one of those 5 Ds: divorce, death, disability, distress, and disagreement. And I think that that's such a fascinating thing that they're kind of blind. This is a blind spot for business owners. So the book makes the point over and over again that you don't have to sell right now. You just need to be ready. And one of the areas, chapter 8 in particular, talks about how to build value prior to a sale. Because sales take...
Yeah, I mean, you should plan, 1 to 3 to 1 to 5 years ideally, but even a year in advance. But the sale itself, like if you called me up and said, Scott, we want to sell today, the national average is probably 9 to 12 months. So it's a year to sell, plus the business owners have to stick around after the sale to, depending on how much they are part of the company. Could be 3 to 6 months, could be 3 to 5 years. Yeah. So it's not just where I can sell the business and always just walk away the next day. There's usually some kind of post-transition. So that's where the workbook talks about how you can when do you want to truly be out of the company, and then work the numbers backwards so you have the time to truly prepare and get through this before you do run out of energy. Because the worst time to sell your business is when you're burnt out, you're tired, and the buyer can see it in your face, and you just want to throw it away. Hey, I just get rid of this thing to whatever it might be. Yep. And we've seen people do that. I've watched one client or not a client of ours, but we just heard a story out west where a gentleman basically was burnt out, wanted to sell, knew he could get more, but left $20 million on the table because he just accepted an unsolicited offer and didn't bring anyone else like us in to bring other buyers to the table because they knew that the buyer knew that if we could just get one-on-one, they were going to get a better deal, and unfortunately they did.
Now, in the trailer, one of the gentlemen that comes walking out of the theater says that having seen this movie, having spent an hour and a half, it's his ROI is like several $1 million. Let's talk a little bit about building value in a business prior to going. And one of the things by doing the workbook, which you mentioned, and that's in the link below, how you get a copy of this book, and the book and the workbook, they're fantastic. But Kelly, you and I were talking yesterday about you were working with a client that had only she was ready to exit the business, but she'd only done like maybe page 1.
She'd gone through the conversation. And again, it all starts there. She'd taken the assessment that Scott put together in the workbook, and she goes, I'm ready to sell. And I'm like, have you completed the rest of the assessments? What are your values? What are your goals, right? Because it's not just numbers driven anymore. Most people think it is. Yeah. I'd say a minority part of it is just write me a check and get out. A guy that leaves $20 million on the table, he was done. Should he have done that? Probably not. But our goal is to walk them through, and I said, you need to finish the rest of the exercises, maybe another hour's worth of time. Will probably bring her an extra $3 to $5 million at the end of the day. And it's a huge deal. So understanding that there's a process, and the title of the book talks about sell your business on your terms. And I think the emotional aspect of it, as Scott talked about, it's almost like giving up one of your firstborn children for adoption. Because most of these business owners have spent probably more time in their business, not saying it's good or bad, than they have with their family. I mean, let's be honest, that's running a business and being an entrepreneur can take away from other things that are more important. And as you get to that second phase of life, what your values and your drivers are going to be driven not necessarily by the numbers.
I think what you just said, selling your business on your terms versus the 5 Ds, or you've just decided it's enough, or the market's changed and your business isn't worth it.
Well, and by the way, the 5 Ds may be a combination of all 5. We've seen that where you've got distress, disagreement, divorce. There's all death. It's not just one of the 5 Ds. A lot of times it's a multiple, right?
Well, and that's just it. Unfortunately, bad things happen to good people, and it's never going to happen to you until it does. And then it's like, what happens? And those that, worst case scenario, at least they're prepared and they've done a lot of these things, their business still has value, and the spouse will know how to transition it. And there's a team already put together early on. Those that don't, and something happens, it just immediately evaporates.
Now that's a great segue to a point. So I want to call you on this. I'm calling you bluff here.
Absolutely.
In the book, you mention that as a business owner, you should take a vacation to build your business. What do you mean by that?
Yes, a lot of business owners that we've talked to over the last 25 years almost wears a badge of honor that they don't take a lot of vacations, or if they do, their spouse complains because they're on their cell phone on texting all the time.
That's
and they're
not
working.
A vacation.
So what we found is that, for the smaller companies that have key employees, but for most of the companies we work with in the low middle market space, they've got some kind of a management team there. But a lot of times that type A personality, that business owner, the management team still comes to the owner to make those final decisions instead of them trying to make those decisions and maybe making a mistake. So what we've found is that one of the biggest value drivers you can have is where you've taken yourself out as the owner, out of the business. You're redundant to the business. Now you're working on the business versus in the business. But the best way to do that is to start taking vacations, because if you're there and you don't set the right boundaries, which most don't, those management team and key employees are still going to come and ask you those questions. They're not learning. They're not spreading their wings and learning. But if you're gone and you say, here's the only reasons I want you to call me are these 3 things when the car's going off the cliff. Otherwise, you make those decisions, and then we'll come back and talk about them after the fact. It allows the management team to start to build some pride that, hey, they ran it for the last 2 days, and then they ran it for a week, then they ran the business for 2 weeks, then it was 3 weeks, then a month. If you can say, yeah, I just took off, we had a client, yeah, I just was gone, last September, it was our best month ever. Boy, I should leave again and go away. Yep. That company is much more valuable than someone that says, boy, the business is dependent on me, and I'm so smart, and I do all this, and I do that, and I have this. When you're I versus we, it's worth a heck of a lot less money, or it might not be saleable at all. And what we've seen is we've seen clients that have $2 million in EBITDA doing $10 million in sales, and like, oh man, this thing's gonna be worth a whole bunch of money. And we go, we can't even transfer it. Well, how is that? Just because you create revenue and EBITDA or cash flow doesn't mean it's a transferable and brings value.
So 2 things before we wrap this segment is, one, what I really do love about the book, I am a very big fan of the book and the workbook, is that when you say EBITDA, I actually have to stop. If the camera was on me, you would see me over here like EBITDA, EBD. And as I'm figuring it out, what I love about the book is that you can pick this thing up and you can start going without, and most business owners are fantastic with the numbers, but some of the lingo that sometimes that can get lost or be intimidating. And what I love about the book is that it's easy to get started. The questions are all straightforward, and it's one of those things where you're not spending a semester here.
Right.
You can get the ball rolling.
Yeah, I wrote the book to make it as simple as easy as possible, just like we're having a simple conversation versus, hey, let me show how smart I am, which I'm not. It's like, let's get through this. Let's understand things. There's a glossary in the back if you're not sure about a few of the different terms, but in a couple of hours, you can get through this, educate yourself, and then read a chapter, go through a couple exercises, and just go back and forth. And in a few hours, you can truly take small but meaningful steps to just planning for your future. And again, whether you're now or 10 years from now, it just helps start that process, because now you know where you're going to and what type of buyer, if you talk about what's interesting to you or what's most important to you in a sale, that'll help you find which type of buyer you might be looking for. So you can now cater your business and build value towards those types of buyers versus not knowing and just grinding away, in the office each day.
Now we're going to have in the link below, you'll be able to see where you can get get in front of this movie, where you can find where this movie is playing. Also, there'll be information below on how you can get a copy of the book. What I want to do though is we're going to end this episode. We're going to take a break, but when we're coming back, Kelly, I've got questions for you, because one of the things that we've talked about, the movie does a great job of talking about this issue as a business owner that you need to be thinking about. The book does an amazing job of talking about selling, preparing, building your business, building more value in the business, all the different things, the choices that you have. One of the things that we need to talk about is, what do you do once you've sold that business? We've got Uncle Sam to talk about, and then what are you doing with that money? So come back after the break. We're going to dive into that, and we will see you on the other side.